Hi everyone, Megan here from Romance by the Book with the lovely Marielle, and we are here with our February Book of the Month author, Harper St. George, who wrote the book we read, which was The Heiress Gets a Duke. And we are here to chat about that and what she's writing next and all that fun stuff. So hi Harper, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So this was a super fun book for me. I feel like when I first saw the cover, I was like, must have this. It's so pretty. But then also the premise was really fun too, of having, like I guess it's not new to have somebody who doesn't want to get married, but you had like these two people. She was like trying to save her sister and then ended up becoming the focus of attention herself, which was a little bit different and unexpected. Did you have a particular inspiration for this story or for like these heroines?
Well, the first I'd heard, obviously I'd read Gilded Age romances with Joanna Shube and Maya Riddell, and they were fabulous. And then I was talking to my friend who had visited Newport, Rhode Island, and taken some of the tours there of the mansions that they give. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this is pre-COVID times, so quite a few years ago. And she told me the story. She had toured the Vanderbilt mansion, mm-hmm. and the tour guide was telling her the story about Consuelo Vanderbilt. And she married a duke in 1895. These marriages really first started around 1873, 74. So they'd been going on for over 20 years at this point. And so she was basically raised knowing that she would marry a duke or someone in the British aristocracy. So she was basically from birth raised to marry someone over there to sort of elevate her family's status from new money to, someone with actual like connections and, social acceptance. And and her training was every day. She went through it. She even had this brace that they made that went around her waist and up her back to hold her neck up for her posture that she had to wear for like hours a day.
Wow.
And
like a giraffe, just
right
around.
Well, if you see pictures of her, she always, these portraits, she always has like this really elongated neck. She was known for her posture.
Look at me straightening myself up.
I know, I'm like,
I know. So that was very much a part of who she was. And so she was made to marry this duke, and she did not want to marry him. She actually had fallen in love with someone else who was, I believe, sort of socially acceptable, but he wasn't a duke, So her mother basically did everything she could. She said she would kill him if Consuelo didn't marry this duke. And then finally she pretended to be really sick and said that Consuelo had made her sick because she was being such a disobedient daughter.
Oh, wow.
So she was basically browbeating and to marry this dude.
I mean, that's
some extreme. Of the cartoons at the time in the papers had her, they said she could be heard walking down the aisle, and there were all these cartoons drawn. She could be heard crying as she walked down the aisle, and there were these cartoons drawn with the duke with money bags. So it was really a big thing back in that time period. And so she had to marry this duke, and for his part, he's also said to have been in love with someone else who he couldn't marry. So
it's awful.
That was my intro into this world of Gilded Age heiresses, dollar princesses, as they call them. So it made me want to go back to the beginning. Like, how did this start? Why did it start? Because, you do have Americans marrying into the British aristocracy a bit, even in Regency it happened occasionally, Mm-hmm. But I want to say from like 1874 to, 1910, 1920, there were like 350 of these marriages.
Wow.
So the floodgates really opened, and I just started researching, and that's really where I get most of my ideas, just from the research. because there are so many great stories from that time. The first one was Jenny Jerome, and she married, he was the son of a duke, in 1874. And she's actually Winston Churchill's mom.
Oh,
So
cool.
Winston Churchill is descended from one of these marriages. And hers was actually a love match. She and her mom and her sisters were over there, and they just happened to meet this guy, and she loved him. Of course, his family wasn't quite on board with it.
Right.
Her family wasn't quite on board with it because I guess he wasn't quite high enough in standing. You know, he was only like, I don't know, the second or third son or something like that.
Okay.
And so the Prince of Wales, though, really, they moved in the same social circles, and he liked her a lot. He liked all of the younger American women who were coming over there because they were just a little different. They were a little more forward thinking and non-conventional. There's a story where one is playing a lute for him at a party. So they're just not brought up in the typical, you know, strict English upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm sure he liked the money that they were bringing over there. I believe by today's standards, those marriages brought about $1 billion into the British economy.
You know, I was trying to think about the first time I ever heard about one of these, and honestly, I think it was Downton Abbey. Like the parents from Downton Abbey, that was how they ended up married.
Exactly.
They used to always, you know, tease her about her little like American sayings and stuff like that, because of course they're like, you know, British ladies, even though their mom's American, and so it was always funny. And I didn't realize that was like a big thing until I started watching that show.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't think it gets touched on enough, especially in historical romance. I feel like there's so many stories there that could be brought out. Because not all the marriages were forced, of course. There were love matches. And there were people who had never even really met when they got married. So, you know, there's a whole range of stories there. But anyway, so he really put his blessing on this marriage. So they were able to get married. And it really opened the floodgates. You saw people coming over. And that's why I said my book at the prologue's 1874, but the story really starts in 1875. Sort of the first couple of years where people are like, hey, maybe this is a good way to save our estates.
Yeah.
That kind of leads well into my question, which was when you I know you wrote a lot about Vikings before, and when you chose the Gilded Age, did that change your research patterns at all, or really just what you were researching that changed?
You know, actually, I like researching the Victorian era, Gilded Age era more because there's so much there you can read. Right. And so many firsthand accounts, letters and diaries and things like that. So you can really get a feel for these people, how they think, how they talk. With the Vikings, and this is also something I love about Vikings, is that it really is when fantasy meets history. Right. So you can really let your imagination go wild because there's so much we know, but there's a lot that we actually don't know too.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think with Victorian, you're already starting to, I'm sure that there's lots and lots of paintings, but also starting to get like photographs and even, well, it must be more 1900s that was still Gilded Age, but you're starting to have like moving pictures, like kind of a early video of things. I feel like I've seen some of people in Paris or people skating or, you know, like just, it must be such different, such different
material
to be researching. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it really, that's what I like about that. It's really the bridge from history to now to me, because you can see how their lives are starting to change into what we view now as our everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you're right, we are starting to get those videos and things like that in the early 1900s, late 1800s, where we can really see little snippets of everyday life instead of just the posed, what they want us to see portraits that we've sort of had all this time.
Yeah. I also thought it was pretty interesting to see how modern the thinking was. And I feel like this is when I've looked back at like historical women, it seems like a lot of times that they're more modern than we give them credit for in the way that they think and the way that they approach problems sometimes. But I thought August and Violet they approached their problem in a completely different way, but they were both agreed that like they were not going to let this happen. And I thought it was really interesting to see that they both seemed like they had different reasons. Like August really just wanted to keep doing the things that she loved, which was working and like being kind of a business person, which Violet wasn't really into, but Violet also was like, no, I want to make my own choices too, which feels like a very modern sensibility, but also felt completely like true of anybody. Like, I don't know, it seemed relatable. If somebody was trying to like tell me who to marry and I never met them, I probably would also be like, ooh, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's totally, something that the women back then went through, because you're being told you have to marry this person and spend the rest of your life with them. So, I mean, from the outside looking in, it seems like a lot of them were accepting, but you see, like, this is when the women's rights movement was really starting to take off. I think it was 1848, 1849, the first women's rights convention happened.
Yeah.
So you are getting a lot of this. You are getting the suffrage movement. You are seeing a lot of these forward-thinking women speak out more. And that's the thing, though. They were there all along. It's just finally they're getting a voice. And I think it's mainly because you see the expansion of the middle class. Because a lot of times the higher, the wealthier women, like Jenny Jerome, when she married and moved to England, she was very much within the political movement. She would go campaigning for her husband, for him to sit in the House, I guess the House of Commons. But she was very much an anti-suffragist. So, and it's because she didn't, I mean, she was privileged, so it didn't affect her as much, Right. But then you have the working class women who are really working 12 hours a day. When are they really going to go out and have the time, the money, the risk of being fired from their jobs if they're out campaigning for women's rights? So you really have this middle class movement that's helping push this, which, for the first time, I really think we're able to see the middle class expand.
Yeah, I think you touched on it a little bit, because August, when she's kind of bucking against this whole idea that they should marry to like solely to increase their family's social standing, she said something to her mother about how her mom was able to kind of do what she wanted. And now that they're in this privileged position where they have money and they like have the opportunity, I guess, maybe to enter a different social class, that they're, it's like her mother has changed her view on things now that it's not affecting her personally. Which, I mean, it wasn't like a long scene or anything, but I did make a note of that August kind of called her mother out on it, because she was really making a decision for her daughters that was going to completely change their lives, when it wasn't, it wasn't going to affect her. She was already married to a man that she liked being married to, and you know what I mean? Like she already had her life set up. It made me curious too about how much of that would have been the case for women back in those days, like in the United States, that come from, self-made wealth, and then they're being forced into this whole to a very traditional system that's not what they grew up with.
Right. It almost seems backwards. Like they had moved beyond that. Their parents were allowed to get married for love and nobody cared. And all of a sudden they're rich and now they have to be forced to marry. Like it seems, super backwards.
Yeah. And it was interesting to see. Was that epilogue, was that inspired by the story of Consuelo Vanderbilt?
The prologue?
Yeah, that's
sort of. Yeah. Camille was definitely drawn from that a little bit. And I feel bad for her because there's not much in the story I could do with her, but she does show up in the next books, just so you know. We do see more.
Well, the beginning, I was not expecting the prologue to start off with like wailing and like that kind of, I was like, oh no.
You feel for her though. I mean, it kind of puts you off on the wrong foot, so to speak, with the whole idea of these marriages, because you're looking at her going like, oh my God, how can they be making her do this? She's literally miserable. And so it kind of sets you off already in your heart. You're like, oh no, this is terrible. And so
well, I wanted to start with that because it was very much where August was at. Like, this is why she was feeling this way. Of course, she would have felt this way anyway, because she liked her job. She liked working at her father's company. And in a lot of ways, she'd been a little bit coddled in that she'd been allowed to do that, whereas a lot of women weren't. And also, like, it was something that was never discussed. She just sort of assumed she had this power and this control over her future, when all along it had been her parents just sort of, you know, saying, okay, do what you want for now.
That kind of brings me to another one of my questions, which was, at first, August thought her dad was like the best because he let her, you know, do all these things that other girls weren't getting to do. Lately, he let her work and he seems to respect her opinions and such. But then, you know, what happens. So I guess my question was, did you always know how that was all going to turn out, or did his character kind of go in an unexpected way when you were writing him?
No, that was more, his character was always who he was. It was more of her perception of him.
Okay. And
you know how you grow up with people and you perceive them one way, and then you kind of get out into the world a little bit and you're like, it's not quite like I thought. And like, she still loves him, but she sees like the different side of him and how he has been so ruthless in his business dealings. Like, there's a reason they went from
rich. Yeah.
So, and you know, unfortunately it extends to her, but in his reasoning, he's doing this for her future. You know, she can't possibly in his mind work at his company forever. It's just something she was doing for a little while, but this is her real purpose in life. And this is how she will actually help the family move forward. So for him, it's just another wing of his business, you know.
It was kind of sad though to see I feel like it kind of broke her heart a little bit, and kind of broke my heart a little bit, because she was so sure that she had a place in that business and that she was kind of important to the workings of it. And valued. And then he really did her in that sense. She was like, oh, I saw the twinkle in my eye. Like, she knew that her mom was all about them being social, but I don't think she saw, I believe she saw how it was going to help her father's company and how much it would, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think she saw that coming.
Yeah, you're right. She was totally fine with how things were. And so she never really saw that coming. And it was sad, but you know, I really felt like it helped her to value herself instead of getting her value from an external source. And that was part of her character arc.
Yeah, I could see that. I also thought that it was that they challenged each other too a lot. Oh, am I breaking up?
A little bit. It keeps coming back before I think we miss anything, so it seems like it's okay for now.
Okay. Well, I forgot what I was going to say anyway. So go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that last week you dropped the cover for book 2 with a gorgeous red dress this time, which makes me very happy. And we are both
still want to buy it immediately.
We're very excited for Violet and Leigh. Violet was definitely a particular favorite of mine, and I think she's going to give him much more run for his money than he thinks. So we're very excited about that. Can you, I guess, if you want to talk a little bit about that, when it's coming out? And
sure. So it's The Devil and the Heiress, and I love that cover too. When I saw it, I was like jumping up and down. I mean, I love the Berkeley Art Department. They do such amazing covers. So book 2 comes out June 29th, and it really is all about the Earl of Leigh falling stupidly in love with Violet, even though he's this cynical character.
Well,
So
I've
it's basically
decided the first piece that I feel like I don't think he can predict how she's gonna act. Because anyway,
I think
if you watch our recaps,
why he's drawn to her at all is because he can't predict how she's going to react, and he likes that.
right. So
we're
it's
writing your
basically a
book for
road
you.
trip romance is what it is.
Fun.
So they have a lot of close quarters contact together.
Ooh. Is there only one bed?
Sort of once they reach their destination where they end up going.
Okay.
I have only one bed.
I think there are anthologies of only one bed out there.
Yes, they're always fun. I like for forced proximity anyway, but only one bed is a particular favorite.
Mhm. Right.
How are we going to make it impossible to sleep on the floor? Explain. No. No,
that is big enough for both of them, Marielle. You know.
It's true. It would be mean to make him sleep on the floor. It's true. Plus, this blanket will save us.
I did that in one of my Viking romances. They were caught in a snowstorm, so it was more of an only one tent situation.
Oh,
nice.
Oh, we might be warmer without our clothes. Snuggle for warmth.
That's what you to do for hypothermia. It's low. I was going to ask you about how you kind of sketch out Violet and August. Also, brother Max. I feel we didn't get to see a lot of him, but they seemed like they were very close and kind of banded together to make sure that everybody was, all the siblings were going to be okay. Violet, like everybody thought she was super, like maybe more malleable than August, more like a lady, in air quotes, than August, is sneaky and 100 that beginning out about what we're gonna do, how are we gonna, this can't happen, and she's just like, oh,
I just won't do it.
Yeah. We were like, oh, okay then. She's they need me to agree.
Violet is a writer and she's a little quieter, but I do think you can be independent and rebellious, but it's more of a quiet sort of rebellion and strength rather than an out there in your face sort of strength. And that's really what she brings. Like, even in book 2, you see it because, in book 2, it starts off her parents are trying to force her to marry this other guy, not the Duke.
Still not the guy back home that she's like, wait, he likes me. That's fine.
And they don't like Teddy.
No, poor Teddy. What did he ever do to them?
He's not a Duke or an Earl. So, and she basically decides, instead of fighting back because she saw where that got August, she's just going to remove herself from the situation. So it's more of a quieter rebellion, but it still gets the same point across.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. She seems highly effective to me. And that was one thing, like Megan and I talked about, and I think it's in our recap video for that week, is that, August is so straightforward and so like, this isn't going to happen. We're not doing, she kind of like faces stuff head on. But then Violet comes around the corner, like materializes out of nowhere in the garden and is like, I heard everything. Tell me that, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, she knows.
It's the writer in her. She's always listening.
I was like, I feel like this woman has her finger on the pulse of exactly what's going on here. And she, is a completely different personality, obviously, but I was really excited to see what you would do with her for her own book, because I do think that once we get in her head, it's going to be like not at all with how people perceive her.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
That's what I really like writing the sisters, how they support each other, but they're so different too. Sort of that comes a little bit from my own daughters. They're much younger at 9 and 12, but I can still see the different personalities, but they're very close. And it was fun to explore that and how they're so different, even though they think similarly as far as we don't want this to happen, we want this to happen. But you're right, they go about it completely different ways.
Will we get to see more of Max maybe in book 3?
Possibly. I can tell you the title of that is A Lady Tempts the Air. So
Ooh. Yay.
that's a little bit of a clue.
Yay!
He actually gets his own point of view scenes a couple times in book 2. So
Oh, good.
you'll see him more in that book too.
I loved how he showed up across an ocean for his sister when she asked him to come. So I'm already a big fan of his for sure.
Well, I mean, when she was like telegraphing, this is going on, and he's just like, here's my itinerary. I was like,
yes.
Max, you don't even have to ask. I'm there.
Rescue. Yes.
He might have to come back in book 2.
Oh,
poor Max spending a lot of time in a boat.
Max is like, look, I'm just trying to live my life.
And half of the boat on the trip back home, he had to deal with his sister sleeping in the bed of her paramour, and they were not married yet. I'm sure he's not happy about that.
Yeah.
You know, he took care of that very quickly when they landed.
For sure. Well, thankfully, by then they were all amenable to it.
The captain of the boat could have married them, maybe.
Oh, that's
I don't know. I was thinking about like that, and then also our Duke in this story is very like, he is very thoughtful and nice and not like a bad person at all. But he does like every once in a while flex his like ducal I don't know, privileges, I guess. And I thought it was interesting when he chose to be like, you go away, or like it just every once in a while, I guess it came in handy. He seemed like the reluctant Duke, but periodically it came in handy. Yeah, for sure. There was that.
He was fun to write. He was a little tricky to me because August came through to me obviously the best, pretty much fully fleshed out. But then I had to figure out this Duke, and I had to make him likable because he's essentially trying to force this woman to marry him for her money. So I think that was the biggest challenge of the book, was writing him so I could like and respect him, which mainly meant going pretty deep into his backstory and his story and what's motivating him and how he's actually saving hundreds of people on his estates by this. So
right, like it wasn't just about him or even just his own family. It was about all these people that depend on his family. Yeah, that definitely made a difference for me.
I found his family to be completely delightful. His mom, from the beginning, when she was just kind of like, oh, you should consider marriage, and he's like, fine, I guess I'll consider it, and she's like, perfect, I've got the person right here. To when they were speaking, when she was speaking with August and
at the dinner table,
and the dad kind of like tried to put in his commentary, and she was kind of like, excuse me,
yeah,
were we talking to you? Like, it was, I was just like, I love this lady. His sisters too were really sweet, and I would love to see more of them. I'm like, you could write me a whole Gilded Age universe. I'm here for it.
Yes, definitely.
I would love that. But yeah, I loved writing his mom. She was so fun.
I mean, yeah, well, even when he was like, it was the horse, and if it was his solicitor, I guess, was the one that was like, again,
oh, your horse hurt you again? Yeah. He's like, yep, it's the dangest thing.
His mom's like, I'm pretty sure that you're better with the horse than that.
And And that she asked like the footman to explain to her what he was doing with his boxing.
There was
I like her.
Yeah,
I
she's
did
fun.
too. There was something when she asked, oh, now I can't remember off the top of my head, that like there was something where she, with the boxing, it was with the boxing, where she was like, this is very dangerous, this stuff could happen. And he's like, how do you know about it? She's just like, never
Yeah.
mind.
I have my ways.
Yeah. Mommy always
Yeah,
knows.
she's fun.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, she reminds me a lot about Violet, but sort of older, in that she's been around the block a lot and she has her sources and she knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did.
One scene that was really, I don't want to say fun, but it was really interesting to write. After the dinner party where Evan decides that he wants August instead of Violet.
Mm-hmm.
They're in the carriage and he brings it up to her and she's like, are you sure she's going to be a little more of a handful? And he's like, yes, that's who I want. And she's like, okay. But then you see August in the carriage with her family and it's like completely different.
Yes.
Pushback and that.
And very like, don't ruin this for us.
Right.
Exactly.
It was like, well,
how dare you
excuse
question
me.
this? Just do what we say. Yeah.
And that's just how very much demonstrative of that time period to me, which could be very frustrating to read about and research.
I think one of the things I love most about Evan was how much he cared about August, even before he was sure if they would actually be able to work everything out. Like, he got so pissed when her parents were just like handing her over. They didn't have any questions for him. They didn't ask him anything about how she was going to be taken care of or if she could still work or anything. And he's like affronted on her behalf because they just like do not care. And it made him mad. And I liked that.
Did you frame, like when you were writing it, did you do that as a way that they each kind of changed each other? Because I wondered if Evan had not had conversations with August before, if he would have even noticed that her parents were not considering her.
Yeah, because it was important to me to make him basically a decent guy, and the bare minimum of that is, how is she feeling about this? You know, I'm gonna have to be married her for the rest of my life. We need to go into this sort of knowing each other, and there's a very low barrier there. So for me, it was just part of having him be a relatable, sort of normal person who wasn't overly privileged and just expecting to have this money handed to him along with this wife.
Well, I think that was more sellable too, because he wasn't supposed to be the Duke. So like, he never thought he was going to have this life. So for him to be a different type of Duke makes sense, because he didn't ever think that was going to be happening for him.
Exactly. And that sort of shows up in his name too, because I didn't really get into this in the book because it was 100,000 words. And everywhere I tried to put this conversation, it never fit. So I just ended up scrapping. I don't think it made it past the first draft. But so he was very much his mother's son. He was the second born. She named him, which is why he doesn't have the traditional English aristocracy name. She named him after her grandmother's family, who she was very close to.
Aww.
So, and his older brother was William, and his brother was very much his father's son. And they had these totally different parallel upbringings that were just totally different. So it very much is why he's able to do these things. And
yeah, that was really interesting to me. So they had like a ducal track and a
pretty much
non-ducal track
and a spare track. Yeah. The heir and the spare. Yeah.
But I mean, it seems like Evan wasn't like he wasn't even in his head. It didn't seem that he had any thought that he was gonna ever take on that role until he had to.
He was fine, enjoying his life, going to his clubs, being a semi-rake. I don't think he was ever like a complete total rake, but you know, having no responsibilities.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he's had this forced upon him with the death of his brother and then his father soon after. So he's been totally living a different sort of life than what he was thrust into.
I really did love the conversation that he had with August, though, where she was like, even if your brother was alive, don't you think you'd be the one doing this? You're the fighter. Like, you'd be the one fighting to save this estate. What would he do? Like, how could he fix this? And it really made him think about, like, wow, maybe I am the right person for this job. So yeah, that was really important conversation. I like that a lot.
That's true, because I think his upbringing, he very much felt he was not as scholarly as his brother. He was not as responsible as his brother. He just, you know, in his mind was not quite as good as his brother was at this job, at taking over the title. So yeah, that was really an important part of his character arc, I think, to realize he does have things that he can bring to this, even if they're not what he was thinking he was supposed to have to bring to it.
Yeah.
You wrote him as, I mean, we have seen, I guess, in historical romance, prize fighting dukes before, but he was a duke that was not prize fighting for like the thrill of it,
or glory, or
he
anything.
needed some cash, and he was going to try to make money and try to pay off a couple debts in whatever way he could figure out to do. I thought that gave, I mean, to me, I felt like it gave me an insight into just like how much he was willing to give up, and even how much he like didn't want to marry somebody for money too, because at the beginning of the story, it's like he's already been doing this for a year, and he's been trying in whatever way. I mean, he has to hide who he is because it wouldn't be socially acceptable for him to like go get a job, so he does this in secret, but it's not for fun, it's because he needs the money. And I thought that was it was interesting and different. Is that something that came to you from the beginning, or like the boxing aspect of things, was that always there, or did you?
No, that wasn't there in the beginning. And I just kept feeling like something was missing from him, because if he's had this for a couple years now, this responsibility, what has he been doing? You know, of course, he sort of went in on the club with his with the Earl and his brother, but like, what else would he be doing? Like, I needed him to be doing something else. And as I got to learn him more,
change the situation. Yeah.
So, and as I got to know him more, it was like, you know, he would really be doing something physical. Like, he's not going to go try to be a solicitor or something like that. He's really going to do something physical. And this is something that he could, you know, he was good at it. He boxed at his club before. He just sort of took it to the next level by doing this. So that was a surprise for sure. And it wasn't until I got to the first scene with him and his mom where I'm like, well, what would he be doing? So then I sort of had to go back and put that in. And
I felt like it gave, at least for me, I felt like it gave me some insight into like I said, his how much he was trying, which was nice. And then now that Bridgerton came out and everybody seems to love those boxing scenes, I was like, well,
good call.
I
mean, really, what's not to like?
Poor Evan, though. He was like, he's trying to flirt, and here's this other guy. And that was
trying to stab him in the
was making me laugh. Well, no, because he was like, you know, done. He was like, I win. And then, oh, whoops.
Oh, maybe not. Yeah. That was really a fun scene between them for sure at the beginning.
Yeah, that was, I finished that scene, and that's where I sort of broke for a while, because I have like, well, what comes next? Like, I wrote those, I guess, the prologue in those first 3 scenes. And then I sent it to my agent, and she was like, and actually they didn't kiss the first time. And she was like, can they please kiss?
I love that it's not just us. It's like, now kiss. Come on.
Kiss. Yeah.
I was like, well, yeah. Well, why didn't I put that in there the first time? Because I had them sort of stopping right before that. So.
Well, she was like, he's coming to get you. Turn around. Oh.
That was great. Well, yeah, the kissing definitely made that scene for sure. So good call, editor. Nice work.
So you said Violet's book is next.
Mhm.
And then
When does that come out?
June 29th.
Okay.
That's not
But
that.
then book 3 isn't set until spring of 2022. So,
Okay.
Then we'll have to wait a while.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Very excited about that red dress cover though. I'm not gonna lie. Red is my favorite. As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh.
No, I saw the little thumbnail when it came through in my email and I was like, I see red.
I love that Violet gets a red dress when Violet is the one that, I don't know. I have a very big soft spot for people who are like seen as very like quiet or don't worry, she'll do what she'll do what we say. And then on the inside they're,
Yep.
she's like,
too, because I really feel like, quiet strength is a thing. You don't have to be out there in your face
it's true
with it. So.
Yeah, and like you said, it's even more effective in her case because she just literally removes herself from the situation and then they can't make her do anything. She doesn't have to tell him no, she just leaves.
Okay.
Very effective.
I'll do what I want.
I love that August is like, we need to solve this problem. Here are our options. We could do this first. We have August came up with like a multi-level strategy. Yes. And she's like, why are you so calm? And Violet is like,
I'm just not going to do it. That's it.
Clear, simple solution. I will not say I do.
Very much looking forward to reading about her and Leigh. And I hope Lee's brother too, because he was a fun little side character. In fact, I wanted to bring up the really funny scene where the three of them were at the club and the brother, whose name I'm forgetting right now, Lee's brother,
Jacob,
was like,
Jacob
oh, you should bring up women's suffrage. She'll definitely want to talk about that. Evan's like, okay.
But then he uses it and I was like,
that was very funny.
Yeah, thank your friends.
Yes.
Yeah, he's in book 2 a little more. He shows up. He has to help his brother out.
I have a feeling that his brother is gonna do things all wrong at first.
He screws up very badly.
Can't wait.
But I mean, he so enjoys her, and
it's going to be fun. We're very excited.
He seems like a kind of chaotic spirit, don't you think? That Leigh is a little chaotic. Like he loves watching all the things fall apart, and he was the one that was like,
oh, who tries to walk in the room?
They're in this library. Let me bring some people. See what happens. I'm like, you are bad. What are you doing?
That line toward the end where he's like, I like fireworks. A very true line for him.
Yeah.
Very much to look forward to. Well, Harper, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you online and all that kind of fun stuff?
Okay, I'm on Instagram a lot. I'm loving Instagram lately, so that's probably where I am more. Harper St. George. Twitter and Facebook at Harper St. George.
Awesome.
And Goodreads too. I'm there sometimes.
Yes, and the day that everyone is seeing this video will be the day that you are taking over our Instagram page. So that will be very much fun for everyone. Come back and see that. We thank you so much for being our Book of the Month author. We had a great time with your book and we love talking to you. So thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me and for reading my book and saying good things.
Oh, we loved it. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.